people don't want to talk to, because if you talk to me, it means that there is a problem. Sometimes I do the juicy stuff like investigations, stuff that would probably get people out of the company, but also some pleasant stuff like training managers and all that. So that's where I've been. So I always like to put this picture when I do my introduction. That's my fiance. Her name's Inez. So we've been together for like 11 years. I graduated in 2013. She's also from LaSalle. Recently got engaged in 2020, but obviously we haven't gotten to marry yet because we wanted a nice wedding, but then all this COVID restrictions need to be followed. So probably at a later time. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you for listening. So as what June had said, right? Tonight we are gonna spend some time really helping you build your CVs and your cover letters. And what I really want, so I thought deeply about how we could spend our time together. And then the first thing that came to me was really mindset, right? So what is the right mindset for us to have in building our CV and our cover letter? So that's first. Second would be, we'll talk about format and content. I have some slides around tips and tricks, and then we'll briefly touch on the cover letter format and content as well. I have like 3 derailers that I think everyone should avoid, and what we could do alternatively, or what we could do different. And then we'll spend most of our time actually doing open Q&A. So sabi ni June, we want this session to be really casual, and I think I want to borrow from her. I'm a very awkward person. It's okay for everyone to be awkward. So wala, kwentuhan lang to. Please don't treat me like an HR manager trying to screen you for jobs. Just a friend helping another set of friends. So please feel free. I know, I think everyone is on mute right now, pero please feel free to just put in chat any questions you have. Some of the questions you might ask midway are something that I might cover across the slide. So my suggestion would be, probably if something pops up, you have a curious thought, you can just take a note of that, and then we can come back to it later, right? Or maybe just put it on chat, and then I'll probably scroll up, and then we can see if we can address all of that, right? Cool. So let us start. Mindset. I thought deeply about what's the right mindset for us to have when trying to build a CV and a cover letter. Oh, by the way, I have questions along the way, and I don't want this to be a complete monologue. So I really need your help. Just shout out your answers to the questions on chat. Don't worry, there is no penalization for wrong answers. And unfortunately, I don't have prizes to give to those who get it right also. But just indulge me. Let's have a little bit of fun. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Emmy. Cool. Binild ka rin pala. Sige, so mindset, right? First question, folks. What do you think is the difference between these 2 photos? Comments lang on chat. Let me know. What do you think's different? What's the difference between these 2 photos? Chat whichever answer you like. No right or wrong answers. I just really want to hear your thoughts. What's the difference between these 2 photos? One is tailored fit. Yes. Thanks, Rachel. Custom produced versus mass produced. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Yes. So the first, kind of lousy, tailored fit. Yes. It's a good one too. So the first thing I really want to say is, when we think about building our CVs and our resume, we want to have a great fit. In Filipino, sukat, right? So if you were a tailor and your resume would be the clothes or the piece of clothing that you're producing or trying to make, what you want to do is not have a generic piece that you would sell to everyone else, but rather, bespoke, custom fit, tailor. You measure every single customer you have and make sure that the piece of clothing you're making is really right, fit towards their body type or whatever it is that they like as a design. So same thing, right? When you look at companies, you want to measure them up, read the job description, read about the company, and then tailor fit your resume and your cover letter for that specific position. So what I'm trying to say is, do not have a mass-produced resume, right? Don't have one resume and sell it to everyone else. Like, make one resume that is tailor fit to every position you're applying to, and that really increases your chances. So firstly, great fit. Sukat na sukat yung resume mo. to that position or that company that you want to apply to, or or better yet, every position in every company you're applying to. So that's the first. Second question, folks. What do you think is the difference between these two photos? The one naman at the bottom. Two pairs of jeans. Obviously, there's a difference. What do you think is the difference? Love to see your comments again. One is patched, yes. Or torn. Stylish and plain, yes. Ripped and patched, Thank you. So the second point I want to drive at is finish, right? Great finish. So if you were the tailor again and you were making the resume, right? You want it to be pulido in Filipino. So when you have a resume that you already fit to the company or the position you're applying to, you want to make sure that it's well done. Meaning, if it were a pair of jeans, walang punit, no tears, right? If it comes to your resume, format is very clean, no typo errors. This is when you can actually practice being a perfectionist. So I'm a perfectionist myself. I love writing resumes because I can do it again and again and again and again until I feel like it's perfect. So these are one of the few things where you don't need to rush and you can take your time in making it, perfect to what you feel like is perfect. So great finish, pulido, right? So my point is, what is the mindset we need to have in building a great resume and a great CV? Writing those things is like being a great tailor. You really want to be a great tailor, right? So I want to start with that. And hopefully that's a mindset we bring in every single step that we do in building our CVs and cover letters. Okay? So what I'm about to talk about in terms of format, content, tips, and tricks are primarily from two articles that I think has really made a difference for me personally when I was building my CV and looking for a job. So giving credit where it is due, two articles. Firstly, this one's a Business Insider article from 2013. Vivian Giang is the author. 19 reasons why this is a good resume. An excellent resume. So that's the first article. The second article is actually a LinkedIn post from this gentleman called Laszlo Bach. So Laszlo used to be the head of HR or people operations in Google. And he had a really great article around how you can have great write-ups for your resume. Now, what I really wanted to point out here is there's a lot of information on the net on how to build cover letters and CVs, right? So much. You can get overwhelmed when you actually search. So this is my way of helping you curate. I mean, if there's two articles that at least has made a really big difference for me, it's these two. It has made a big difference for my friends as well, and some of the students I got to interact with in DLSU. So this is a very special topic for me as well because I used to teach classes for graduating students in DLSU around also landing jobs and finding what it is they want to do in their careers. And I always put these two articles as references, and I hope they're helpful for you. So take some time to read them, but most of the content I'll probably discuss in the next few slides. Okay. Sige. So let's do format and content. I'm gonna switch a little bit and show you what I feel like is the best format I've seen on the net. This is my personal opinion. I think you may have seen other formats that may work for you, but for me, I think this is by far the best I've seen on the net. So you can see my screen, right? I'm currently on my browser and I'm like going up and down. You can see it, yes. I just want to make sure. I see Drew nodding. Okay, cool. So when you scroll down, you'll see the format actually being disclosed in this article. And I'm not gonna go deep into each of it yet. Let me just zoom out a little bit, and I just want to show you like the overall look of it. So you got a heading up top, right, where the name, the contact details are. There's this neat executive summary. In place of an objective, there's this executive summary talking about basically summarizing the person's career plus some skills that the person has. So obviously it's fictional, right? Joni, job seeker, is not a new like an actual person. And then there's this section around professional experience, right? So we'll talk about that. So we'll talk about the heading. We'll talk about the professional experience section. We'll dive deep there. And then it's a one-page resume, which is cool. It ends with an education and a technical skills section, and that's it. Just 3 sections. So I actually used this when I was building my own CV, and I modified it a little bit. Now let me go back to my slides, and we'll dive deep into each of those sections. Okay. So heading first. If you look at the heading, maybe this is where I'll pause again. I want to get your first few inputs, just your first few thoughts. What do you like about this heading, and what do you feel like can be improved? I want to get your comments first. Let's build on each other's knowledge. I feel like you have some thoughts that will probably work to drive the points already. So folks, feel free to put on chat. What do you like about this heading, and what do you feel like needs to be improved? Told you so. This is not a monologue. Brief and precise, simple but direct. Yep. Thanks, Kima. Any other inputs? Innovative but brief. Yeah, I like that brief is coming up. Diba? It's not that long. It's easy to read. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you, Mark. Action words highlighted. There, I love that too, right? So let me give my comments around this one. Yes, sweet and simple. Thanks, Diana. So let me give my comments around this one. To me, I think this is a nice heading for particular reasons. Firstly, when you look at the very top, there's not a lot, it's not overwhelming when you look at the contact details, right? So one email, one mobile number, one LinkedIn URL. And then you notice the address itself is just a city, right? I get this question a lot, right? Do I have to put my full address on top of my heading? Not necessarily. Sometimes that can be a safety issue depending on which hands your resume or your CV ends up with. A general location or area would actually do, right? And I think it may not be as relevant even if you're looking for remote jobs. But it's nice to have at least a geographical area, but not your full address, not necessarily. The other thing that I like about this is it basically summarizes the candidate's experiences, right? You're very clear that this person has a background in finance and has, finance skills. So you see that the bullet points at the lower end, right, capture some of the skills that this person has acquired over, some experiences in finance. What I don't like about this is there are, I would say, character traits, right? So I don't like the bit around meets tight deadlines, possesses practical. Sorry, let me fix my video ears. Delivers superior performance, all that stuff. Operates with a strong urgency and thrives in a fast-paced setting. I mean, those are good words to have in an interview, but then they don't make much of a difference, I think, in your resume. I can't tell if you operate in a fast-paced setting from a piece of paper. I'll probably know that when I get to talk to you, right? So if you want to save some space, you can do away with the character traits, but then still capture, a nice executive summary of your experiences. Here's how I did it. So here's an actual example of my executive summary in my own CV. This is the CV that got me into Microsoft. So it's very close to my heart. Landed me the best job I have so far. So what I did here was I used the keyword HR generalist. I mentioned how many years of experience I have, and then I name drop industries and companies, right? So immediately I said I was in consumer goods, in banking, and higher education, in these organizations, and then I dropped some keywords. I included some keywords that I would say are hot or buzzwords within the HR space, right? So business partnering, change management, organization design, talent planning. Some of these are very common words. I'm trying to find the right word for it. What is it? Jargon. There you go. It's common jargon in the field of HR. So you might have common jargons within your respective fields too. If you've had experience in any of that, the executive summary is a good place to start dropping those terms and probably even dropping some names, right? So that's the heading. So I want to move to experiences. So I think this is a lot to take in, and we'll dive deep into one of them. But what I just wanted to highlight here is in the professional experience section, what I love about this is there's a write up about the organization or the company that the candidate was in, right? So fictional company ABC, right? There's a write-up in italics, right? One of the largest pharmaceutical companies producing a portfolio of products, etc. It gives a good context around what kind of organization or what scale or magnitude was the candidate actually in, right? And then after that, the candidate discloses what the position was in that organization, and then has another write-up around what the job description was, also disclosing, what kinds of things she was actually handling. So what I love about this is it gives me great context around, one, the scale and magnitude of the company, but also the scale and magnitude of the role, right? I really appreciate her, letting me know that she handled the 2.1 billion nutrition segment, business. So I would see some resumes not mentioning this. It would stop at the name of the company in the position, and I sometimes feel that it's sayang, nakahinayang, kasi you actually have an opportunity to present, how big or how complex your context actually was. So if you have some figures to cite, or at least some words to capture what you were doing inside the company, then this is your chance to actually put it there. And then the achievements, the results that were achieved in the role are actually in bullet points, which are very easy to follow. That's what I like about this one. And then you can notice that it's in, I think, reverse chronological format, right? So the most recent experience is up top, and then the more, the experiences that have been in the past are listed downwards, right? So most recent first, going down to the ones in the past, right? So let me dive deep into one of these entries, right? So in company ABC, again, check this out. There is a description of the company in italics underneath. And then you can see that the person talked about what a financial analyst does and what she specifically actually handled, right? And then again, results in bullet points. Notice that every bullet point starts with a verb, right? Generated, improved, conducted. So that's a very powerful way to start describing your achievements. So first bullet pa lang, right? Generated approximately $452,000 in annual savings. The moment I read that, I'm like, wow, cool. This person knows, this person can do their job well. This is a common pitfall I see in resumes of candidates in general, and also my students, the ones I've taught. They stop at talking about activities, meaning they put the position, they put the company, and then they talk about what they were responsible for, but then they miss out to call out the results. So some resumes, I would say, just say, I look at vendor relationships and annual savings, but they don't measure, they don't mention the figure, right? So as much as possible, if you have metrics or numbers to cite, or even state it qualitatively, be sure to start by really disclosing your results. That's what I love about this portion. So here's an actual example I did for Benil, right? So check out what I did here. Firstly, I describe what Benil is, right? It's a higher education institution in the Philippines. And I talked about how many schools there are or campuses, right? Talked about how many students and how many employees we were dealing with. So what I wanted to do here was really paint the context of how complex my work can actually get. And that's what you really want to do, right? You want to show the scale and magnitude of the organization. And then I put my position here. I was an HR special projects officer. And I talked about what I did, right? So firstly, what I wanted to also establish was, I was doing important work, right? So I reported directly to the HR director and the chancellor. And then I talked about what I was actually doing, right? And then I put in, so I was only there for 6 months. So it was actually challenging for me to kind of cite in metrics what I got to achieve. But I ended up with these 2 bullet points. again, I used verbs, right? I finished the HR master plan. I talked about how many people that master plan would actually impact. And then I also talked about some analysis I did. And again, I talked about how many people that would actually impact and what that would mean for the organization, right? So again, you want to use this space to have versions of, your write up on the company, your position, and also the achievements you've actually had. Okay. So basically, when you write down work experiences, for me, this is probably the best way to do it. Um, Very good context, right? I think what people miss out is they stop at just putting entries in, not really thinking, will the reader really understand this organization? Will the reader actually know what this organization is? Will the leader actually have context around my position? So all those open questions are actually answered by this format. Okay. And then here's an example, actual example as well from my own CV. This one naman is an example wherein you were in the same organization or entity, but you've had two positions. So I was in P&G Philippines Inc., the entity, and then I happened to have two involvements there. So I was firstly employed as an intern. So I talked about my internship. And then I was employed in this, so I was involved in this enrichment project. So what you can just do is, under the same umbrella, right, under the same heading of the company, you can have two entries and just make sure that they're in chronological order. So I put the enrichment project first, which was July to December. And then I had the internship April to June 2013. But same banana, right? I talked about what I was doing in that position and then had a bullet point on each of my results. Um, and it looks easy to read, but to be very honest, just this one bit in my resume took me a good 3-4 hours. Again, tailors don't do their clothes quickly, diba? They spend meticulous time revising and revising and revising, making the clothing really good. And that's what you want to do with your resume as well. Again, you can be a perfectionist, at least in this context. So this one bit took me about 4 hours. I was reading and rereading and trying to find the right metrics. So it's that amount of effort that you want to put so that you can end up with very nice write-ups. Okay, and then I want to go to other parts. So this one is from my own example. I have an education section. As you would notice, I just listed my highest educational attainment first. I was trying to save some space as well, right? My logic was, obviously I wouldn't end up in college if I didn't finish high school. So I just put the college bit there. This is something I learned from DLSU actually. So I put my grade point average and then the number of times I've been in the dean's list. And then notice that I don't have any acronyms. I spelled out everything. I didn't even say BS. I said Bachelor of Science. So you want to make sure you don't have acronyms as well. And then I have this bit around personal background. So in the personal background section, I recommend to put languages that you're fluent in. That's number one. Number two would be programs or apps that you are adept at. Some people say just Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office programs or some general umbrella or category. So what I would recommend to do is spell out every single program or app that you're actually well versed in, right? So as you can see here, I said Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Visio, really enumerating each of that. And it helps because when people search for keywords on your resume, hopefully these things will actually come up. And then the last bit I added, just to make me a little bit more human on paper, are my interests. So interests are also a great way to add more depth to your resume. Meaning, if there are particular qualifications that are being looked at a certain job, and even if you don't have professional experience on it, you dabble or you go into it casually, this is another section where you could actually put that in, right? So what I put here would be some things I'm interested in, like teaching, design thinking, volunteering, photography, videography. One common thing I tell my students not to do is put interests or hobbies that don't have I would say a professional equivalent, or just everything, some things that everyone actually likes, right? So please don't put sleeping or eating or watching Netflix. Everyone likes to do that, but I think that won't have a a professional application. So productive hobbies or interests, please. And then I have this one last bit on references. I usually just put available upon request. But but then I make sure that they are indeed available upon request. So you can have that bit as well. Maybe you can also take it out. I mean, if the company needs references, then you can give them the names, right? And that's basically it. Like in terms of format and content, I would say this is one of the best examples that has worked out for me. And I think the challenge now for you is to create your own version of it, right? Sige, let's dive deep into, so I always get this question, Earl, okay, we get the format, we get the content. How do I make it my own? How do I start sewing that nice suit for my nice customer or that company? So let's go into tips and tricks. Firstly, so there are two tips and tricks I want to talk about. One is the art of making great write-ups, and then the other is spotting keywords and using them. So let's go with this one first. The art of making great write-ups. So this is where the article of Laszlo Bock from the LinkedIn post of Laszlo Bock actually comes in. And I think he did a really great job in articulating this. So if you want to make, so let me go back one slide here or two slides. If you want to make nice bullet points, right, like this one, or maybe like this one, how, what do you need to do, or what mindset do you have to actually, be able to write that? So here's a really neat trick or tip from Laszlo. So how you want to do it is accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. I think it's confusing the first glance, but I'll give you some examples. What you want to do is you start with an active verb, measure what you accomplished, and then describe what you did to achieve your goal, right? So this is the basic format of it. Now, let me give you an actual example. Let's use that finance example again. Here's one way that people commonly write their resumes that I think is sayang, diba? Nakakahinayang kasi they could actually add more. So it looks nice, right? Studied financial performance of companies and made investment recommendations. Cool. I know what you did, but how do I know that you did a great job at it? So if we were to apply that formula in the previous slide, this is what it may look like. So check this out. From studied financial performance of companies and made investment recommendations, it became, look at the action verb, improved. What did she improve? Portfolio performance by how much? 12%. What does 12% mean? $1.2 million. And how did that person do it? Did it over 1 year by doing this, right? Refining cost of capital calculations for all that finance who I don't understand. But it gives credibility, right? So let me break it down, why this is a great way to write it. Firstly, stating that there was a 12% improvement makes the write-up more powerful, right? Sure, I know you improved portfolio performance, but by how much? 12%. Cool. I know the context. And then what this person did really well was that person added $1.2 million. And which answers the question, is 12% a big deal or not, right? I mean, if 12% is like 12 pesos, then maybe not so much. But then if you're telling me 12% is $1.2 million, then it's a big deal, right? Providing more context. And then explaining how it was done adds credibility and reveals what the person's skills are and where they're also strong at, right? So obviously my conclusion is this person knows how to do capital calculations and knows how to handle a portfolio of investments because that person, increased a portfolio by 12%, earning that organization $1.2 million, right? So that's how you kind of wanna, do it. And let me give you more examples. This one is from a college student who is a leader in her sorority. So I made this table, right? Meh, okay, awesome, right? So I'll give you some time to read this, right? And try to digest the difference, right? Look at this. From activities to describing what was handled into really disclosing what the result was, what the tangible outcome is. I see a question from Elaine. That's a good one. Maybe I can answer it now, if that's okay. But what if you have no actual data to quantify your previous performance? That's a very good question. And thanks, Elaine, for asking. What I usually recommend is, if you don't have that data, two things lang. One is, see if you can come back to it. Like maybe You have previous emails. Maybe you can talk to your previous boss. Maybe there's some documentation that captures it. Um, I was faced with this scenario when I was in college. So I was trying to write a version of this for some org work I did. But that org work was done, I think, 2 years before I wrote the resume. So I tried to dig from like previous project papers, and I found some data points that I could actually cite. The other thing you could do would be just to make estimates, right? And then disclose that they are estimates. So you can put in your write-up estimated like this, right? Make a very close estimate. And that's okay, right? That's acceptable. You at least have a ballpark around what you were able to achieve. Yes, Mark. So there you go. You can definitely use estimates, but please disclose, right, that they are estimates. So as much as possible, cite those metrics if you can, right? Okay, so let's look at another example. College student participating in a leadership program. Guesstimates also work, but then again, disclose that they are guesstimates. At least just give a ballpark of what you got to achieve. So again, meh, okay, awesome scale. This one naman's a little bit different. It's not really achieving results, but getting into a prestigious program, right? So from meh, look at meh, like member of management leadership for tomorrow. If I were a reader, I would really wonder, okay, what does MLT mean? What is that? Like, I don't have context at all. Okay is a little bit of context, right? Selected as one of 230 for an 18-month professional program for high achieving diverse talent. Okay, cool. This actually looks okay already, but then the person went a step further and said, and even disclosed the criteria, right? So you basically get chosen into this program based on three things: potential, leadership potential, ability to contribute to this MLT cohort, and is there one more there? Academic success. See? So what conclusion can I draw out of this? It means that, okay, this person is obviously at the top of their academic group, probably very good grades, and, probably a natural leader, right? So I know the criteria. So, okay, let's get out of school and have a real world example, or a world of work example. Sales support associate. So I only have two for this one, meh and awesome. Meh is, again, activities. Achieve the annual business plan commitments for all this stuff. Again, it's just activities. I don't know if you did a good job or not. And then here, very good context. As a team member, very honest. They could have said they were team lead, but then team member, very, very, very accurate. Contributed to 21% increase in advertising spend by achieving, all these numbers, right? And even went down the detail of got it in 20 minutes per customer, right? So that's the level of detail that you actually want to get at. Let's go for another example. This one's a marketing manager, right? Meh, okay, awesome. So I guess you can see the theme now, right? Don't just stop at activities, but rather talk about results, and then talk about how those results were actually achieved, and have a baseline for how this is actually measured, right? So don't worry, I'll give you the slides so that you can experiment on your write-ups on your own. And that's basically the art of making great write-ups. Strive for this level of detail. And again, take your time in building that nice bullet point and, gathering the metrics you need to cite. Estimates or guesstimates are okay. Just factually disclose that they are estimates. Okay, second tip and trick: spotting and using keywords. So June and I talked about this when we were preparing for the session. The reality is today, in any given job opening you see online, it's very likely that that particular opening just by itself would probably get hundreds or even thousands of applicants. And, HR people looking at that, it's impossible for them to read every resume that gets submitted to them. So there are many companies today that use systems that obviously organize all these submissions. And what HR people, recruiters, hiring managers do is search. So it's like searching on Google or on Bing. So if I have a database of 1,000 people, I want to trim them down and just read the ones that I think will be relevant. And what I want to do to trim that list down, or to at least filter into candidates that I will probably hire, is keywords. right? So you want to make sure that your profile has those keywords so that when they search for you in whatever system they have, you're very likely to come up in the top results, right? I think everyone knows how search algorithms work. The more you have it in that particular document or that particular database where the algorithm is searching, the more likely you actually get to the top of the results. And the more you mention it, right? For example, if the keyword is cake, because I'm hungry, um, the more you have cake in your resume, the more likely you're actually gonna come up in the top results, right? So what I'm trying to point out is this is the part where you are like a tailor measuring your customers. So you also need to measure what the company actually looks for. So here's a real example. I went on LinkedIn a few days ago. Oh, by the way, it has a neat search feature, right? I know everyone's trying to look for remote jobs. So, I think hopefully everyone knows this already. You can put remote on the search bar and it actually gives you all these remote jobs, right? So I particularly looked at some, keywords under the remote, the remote filter and, just use this as examples. So we have a telemarketing specialist from a company called Rushable looking for remote employees in the Philippines. And here's, the job description or what they're the posting on what they're looking for. Sige, let me engage you again. Please indulge me and type your answers in the chat. What do you think? So if you look at the requirements of the role, what do you think are keywords? If you were applying to this job, what do you think are keywords that you should strive to put on your resume? So type lang your answers. What are good keywords? I saw your question, Eleanor. I'll come back to that later. Promise. Okay, telemarketing. Yes, that's a good one. It's definitely a keyword. What else? Sales. Yes. Other keywords that you spot. There you go. Cold calling, diba? So for me, the keywords here would be sales, right? There's cold calls or cold calling. There's telemarketing. There's also Spanish and Chinese, right? And what else do I have here? Sorry, I'm just gonna move my camera a little bit because I can't. Okay, there you go. Restaurant, right? So this one's very unique, diba? So it's making cold calls to people running restaurants, which is basically telemarketing, and probably some people in Spanish or Chinese speaking regions, right? So if you have these experiences or skill sets, you want to make sure that you at least mention them once or twice in your resume for this particular opening, right? US time zone actually it can be an advantage as well. Thank you, Marilyn. So if you worked in the US time zone before, you might want to drop that as well or include that in your resume. So yeah, let's look at another example. This one, sales executive from a company called Kronos Agency. Okay, again, please type in your inputs in the chat. What do you think are good keywords to include if you were applying to this job? Sales again, yes. Other nice keywords you're spotting? Digital marketer, digital marketing, yes. Anything else that you see? Pipeline management is a good one, yes. HubSpot or a simple CRM, perfect. Okay, to me, keywords here would be client facing, sales activities or sales. There's pipeline management, forecasting, onboarding and handover. Again, cold emails, digital marketing, sales targets, HubSpot, and CRM, right? So I think we're starting to get the theme here, right? It's not adjectives, but rather, what do you call them? Like nouns or again, jargon, right? So words that really capture what the work is. And I think I want to call out in particular, what I think is very hot here would be HubSpot or CRM. So when you have that, I think it puts you right up there in the search results if you're lucky to be working on the same platform that they're actually looking at, right? So spot those jargons. Okay, let's look at another example. I think I have 4. This one's a finance one. So again, company called Staff Street's looking for a senior accountant, work from home. What this one's I think easy. Lots of financial jargons. So go for it. Yeah. CPA, ad hoc, yes. CPA again, yes. QuickBooks, yes. This one has tons of keywords, right? So in the finance world, you can name drop so many things. I mean, to me, there's account reconciliation, there's revenue accounting, there's expense accounting, financial reports, bank transactions, invoices, billing, accruals, prepayments, journal entries, all these financial jargons, right? Cash flow, generally accepted accounting principles or gap accounting. And what's this last one? QuickBooks. There you go. Right. So I think you guys are getting the hang of it, right? One last example from a different field. Social media and video marketing strategist being looked for by FWD Insurance. Again, a remote position. So this one's a fun one, I think. So what do you think are the keywords on this one? Would love to see your answers on the chat again. Social media accounts, yes. Insurance content campaigns, sprinkler, yeah, social analytics. Cool, you guys are getting the hang of it, right? So, there's the obvious ones like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, right? There's digital, content campaigns, video, right? Storytelling, social media again, marketing, awareness, acquisition, adoption, which I think is a marketing jargon. There's blog, right? Social analytics, and then of course there's sprinkler, right? So what you want to do again, being a good tailor, measure your company, spot these keywords, and then tailor fit your resume towards what they're really looking for, right? As close as you can. Cool. So I want to go quickly into cover letter and format and content. I'm not going to spend too much time here. What I really just wanted to point out is this. When you write a cover letter, there's so many things you can actually describe. Why you're trying to apply to the company, why you're inspired to do all that stuff, your life story or whatever. A practical way to do this would be to match your experiences with the job description. Here's the cover letter that, by some sort of miracle got me into Microsoft. Actual. So I've just blocked off the names, of course, for their privacy. Wow, that was almost 3. Oh, it's 3 years ago. Well, yeah. So on March 15, 2018, I was lucky enough to actually ask the recruiter on who was gonna interview me. So I would say this is not like a cover letter per se. It's already an introduction, like a self-introduction prior to me getting interviewed. So I addressed it to the 3 interviewers that were actually gonna talk to me. I had some context, and here's what I did. I looked at the role's job description. I call them desired skills and qualifications. And this is the actual wording or verbiage from the job posting that Microsoft had at that time. And then what I did was I talked about my experiences that I think would match these desired skills and qualifications, right? So the role's job description has been shared to me, and leveraging the information I have at hand, I put down the skills and qualifications alongside a summary of my experiences in those areas, right? Where I struggled here was I wasn't completely sure if what they meant in these skills and qualifications were actually matching my experiences. But I tried my best, right? And some of them, I would say, I was probably still weak at being early in my career. So I only put what I think would be, relevant, right? For example, excellent cross-group collaboration. So in my experiences, I just said, I led different projects across different time zones and different teams, right? I didn't get to facilitate workshops or trainings that much yet. So I just kind of talked about what I did in my work in collaborating. Here's the second page of it. There were 9 things that they listed. So I also have 9 summaries of what experiences I think would match it. One very close to my heart that I still smile about up until today. Check this out. Number 9, minimum of 10 years of HR business partner work experience. I don't have that. I didn't have that. I still don't have that today. But what I just did was I only have 4 years, but I tried my best to capture a good, write up about what I achieved in those 4 years that would hopefully still, compensate for my lack of experience, at least the impact I had in those short years. And you may be faced with the same scenario, and that's completely okay, right? It's okay for you, and I think many companies are doing this, giving people more chances. They're not very strict with the requirements. I was so happy that Microsoft was not with this one. And just go for it, right? Just put a write up there. And then I even ended with this nice ending. It's basically Microsoft's mission, right? Just to make it really personal. So you might not have the opportunity to know who your interviewers are before the interview, but that's okay. Create something like this. And then, but if you have the opportunity, like simply ask the recruiter, hey, who's going to be interviewing me? You might have their names. You can do what I did. So, I addressed them directly to my interviewers, and I specifically asked the recruiter or requested the recruiter, hey, I prepared something for my interviewers. It's sort of a cover letter / introductory letter. If you can send this to them before I get interviewed, I would really, really appreciate that. And I was walking into the interview very confident because I felt like I made a good impression with this one. And that's something you can do too, right? Go for it. Basically, that's it, right? Match your experiences with the job description. That's how you really want to make your cover letter. Okay, I want to talk about 3 derailers to avoid and what to do instead. First derailer, a generic career objective, character traits, and typo errors. This is an actual example I found randomly on the net. So there's some typos here, like misplaced periods. There's a highlighted T, which tells me that probably this person was doing it haphazardly. The career objective, if you notice, very general, doesn't really tell me what experiences or skills you bring to the table. And then these trends are all character traits, right? I'll only find them out when I start working with you. It's not something I can prove from a piece of paper. So to me, waste of space. What you can do instead, I wouldn't say this is the best example. I'm just making a reference to what I did. Have an executive summary, right? Talk about industries, experiences, jobs you've been. Name drop all those skills that you've had or gained. Don't mention any character traits, and obviously no typo errors, right? Second derailer, skill meters. This one's a personal peeve of mine. I'm like when I look at this, I'm like, I don't know how good you are in Photoshop by like these dots, right? So I think infographics became the trend at a certain point in time, and I think for some articles or some pieces of like writings or papers, this looks good. But then for a resume or a CV, I don't think it works, right? It doesn't really give me context on how good you are in these skills. It gives me your skills, but then I can't tell how good you are, right? So instead of doing this, what you can do instead is a link to a website where your greatest works are uploaded. And it applies to many fields, right? For example, if you're a coder and you make lines of code algorithms, there are many sites where you can upload it, like GitHub, right? If you're creative, right, there's YouTube, there's Behance. This is actually a screenshot from my sister's Behance. She's a graphic designer, right? Upload everything you put there. And that tells me how good you are with these applications, right? If my sister put in Adobe Photoshop, the skill meter, I wouldn't really know how good she is, but I would know how good she is when I look at her works, right? So that's what you want to do as well. Be it if you're in creatives, if you're in a technical role, even if you're in writing, right? You want to be a you want to write some copies for a certain publication. You can also upload some of your previous articles, links to your previous articles, even essays you've written down, right? Find a website where you can upload all of that. I mean, even a personal drive would do, like a Google Drive or whatever it is that you use. And you can put it there, right? So that your potential employers can really see your output and what you're capable of doing. Last derailer, acronyms, right? So I think this is an easy one, right? Not a lot of people would know what acronyms mean if they haven't been to those organizations. So these are actual acronyms that I had when I was a student, or when I was trying to apply for jobs. And you basically just want to spell them out, right? You either have no acronyms in your resume at all, or you spell out the meanings of those acronyms prior to subsequent instances of usage, right? If you want to use, for example, if you notice in my resume, I had PNG in it, but then at the very top, I called out what PNG means, which is basically Procter & Gamble, right? So never leave acronyms not spelled out in your resume. And I am done with the talking part. Now I really want to hear from you guys, and I'm excited to just let June unmute everyone.